Welcome everyone to another episode of Dark Rhino Security Confidential. This is Manoj Tandon, your host, and today I'm joined by Fred Oedegaardstuen. I apologize if I have butchered that. People usually butcher my name too, Fred, so maybe that's a little bit we have in common. But Fred is a software engineer. He's an entrepreneur, and he has a lot of industry experience in open source, DFIR, automation, pen testing. He's worked in an MSSP environment. In essence, and Fred is a co-founder and CEO of Shuffle. So he's has an extensive background in cyber, and we are honored to have him on as a guest on Security Confidential. Thank you, Fred. Yeah, I understand this is your first podcast, so we're kind of honored to have you do your first one with us. Appreciate it.
Hopefully, the first of many. It's exciting. I'm trying to spread or talk more about security outwards instead of just keeping everything to myself that I'm learning over time now. So yeah, thanks again for having me.
You're joining us from Tokyo, so that we have in common. I used to live there way back.
Yeah. I heard you say that earlier, right? And I'm really excited to actually hear more about that now. We decided to skip it for now, right? So can you talk a little bit about that? Where do you live?
Oh, I lived in Roppongi, and my office was in Shinjuku. So I used to take the train in every day, 2 trains. It was a wonderful
those
experience.
Trains that are super full.
Oh yeah. But it was a wonderful experience. We had a heck of a time living in Tokyo. It's a very vibrant city. From what I remember, it's a metropolis.
Oh, for sure. It's way different for me as well. I'm a Norwegian from like a tiny country with a tiny population, right? Like going on the street here, in one day I see more people than I see in a year in Norway is what it feels like. So,
well, is the population of Tokyo more than the entire country of Norway?
Oh yeah, way more. It's like 7 times more or so.
So why Tokyo? How did you get over there?
So I can bring you all the way back, or I can bring in the essentials. I essentially went here on a holiday 2.5 years ago, and throughout that I got to experience everything about the country and kind of fell in love with the whole thing. But the reason I actually ended up moving here was a little different, because as I went here, I wanted to talk to some other people. So I actually went on a couple of dates to learn from people. It wasn't really about the dating side, but it was about meeting people and talking to them. And I met this one amazing woman who I'm now living with, who is Japanese.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's kept. And so do you find it difficult as a cybersecurity practitioner where I assume Japanese is a second language for you, so to engage in the...
So I don't speak Japanese. I'm going to school now to learn it, kind of on the side. I am spending time trying to learn how to speak so I can talk to her and her family in like their native tongue, right? But I'm not there yet. I wish I were. But I don't have any trouble actually talking to people here, because most people in cybersecurity are mostly international, is what I've found. So that's why, by example, I spoke at a conference back in January, a Japanese conference. And I got good feedback even from the Japanese people at that conference.
Oh, excellent. So talk to us a little bit about open source and cybersecurity. I'm a lot of times there's a lot of open source technologies out there. In fact, for threat hunting, there's so many open source tools that are available, and they're good tools. But it hasn't become as mainstream as one would have thought, and you're totally open source. So tell us a little bit about what your thoughts on open source.
Sure. So there's a lot of ways to go with that question. Of course, you can take it to like business decisions, or you can take it from the security side and something in between, right?
I would love to get both sides of it. So you can start with security or the business. I'm good with it either way.
Sure. So without going into too much history, right? Because you can go really far back if you want to talk about this. But talking about like my experience, because I've been working on open source tools for maybe 8 years or so at this point, and Shuffle is just the latest one. So I have a lot of stuff out there. So I've been in the community and I've seen everything. But one thing about it that I can get straight to, which is really important about it, is that it's all about sharing, right? It's about sharing knowledge, and I'm really, really into that, which is all about teaching people how something works in a better way and giving them the opportunity to grow by just looking at what's out there, right? So going far, far back, this is all about the innovation and everything. Most of the stuff we're using, even right now, in this recording session, right, is from open source tools. Even though we are on this platform that's like really mature and futuristic of like the 2020, 2021, right? Most of what it is open source, and that comes down to the fact that people just want to share the knowledge and want to help other people understand and keep engineering new things. It's a developer's dilemma, I think. Something I'm struggling a lot with.
So then, but doesn't at some point you have to make a living too, right? So
yes.
So the monetization of this, what's been your experience with that, with open source technology?
So in general, I'd say it's not the best, right? It's people have not done it very well over the years, and I think that is because they want to. There is a lot of hate actually towards people that are open sourcing and trying to earn money from it, because they feel like it should just be open source, and because of that, a lot of people are not going down that route, right? Plus, on the other side, it's actually really hard to monetize something like that. So something I've been living off for the last year and a half has been sponsors, people actually helping me out personally through these open source platforms like GitHub, where they kind of like give money to me before the business becomes sustainable. Because that is a way for you as an entrepreneur, as a creator, to share with the community even more than you would otherwise. And for me personally, I would not be doing it still if I didn't start earning money like half a year ago when I first got some help.
That's very cool. I didn't know that that was the path forward, where people are willing to sponsor, and that's great. And you're also doing a service by creating open source technologies that are available to everyone and accessible to everyone.
Yeah. So there are a lot of ways to go here, right? Like, and the long-term goal here for Shuffle as well is not to make money for me personally as the creator of the tool itself, as like the starter of it, right? The point is to create an enterprise where you can actually help innovation in general outside of just in the open source part of it, right? You need to help people. You need to actually make a business model around the thing, instead of just going for sponsorships. This is all about how to get started, right? And I am in the start phase of this. So how we're actually approaching it, and I'm saying we because I'm working with a lot of different people now who will be brought on board as this gets bigger and bigger. We are working on ways that you can kind of like bind business aspects, which are over here, with the open source side, and really, really reducing the barrier to entry for all of these things, right? So specifically, just to go into specifics here, one of the things we've done, which people typically don't do, and which I haven't seen too much of in the open source space, but which, by example, Elastic has done really well in, has been support and integrations with cloud services. And there are kind of like really important ways you can go there, where you can offer a fully working open source solution over here, which doesn't need all the maintenance and everything. It's not like 20 years ago when it felt like it would break at any point.
Yeah.
It's more of a how do I say it? It's more of a mature process now, where you actually have these entities behind it, like Red Hat, right? They also did this really well. They took this open source process, made it kind of their own, made their own version, and that is the Red Hat Linux, right? And they also have CentOS, around that.
Yep.
I'm not sure if they're behind it actually, but the point is around the support of it. They made such a good business model that now they are a giant of industry, right? In
Very
IT
much so.
in general. And that is something that we see more and more at this point. So just to get into security a little bit, because you said you don't see it a lot. I see it a lot, right? Because my goal is essentially to help spread the words of all of these things. Tools like the Hive has been a big up-and-coming tool over the last 5 years. And I'm not sure if your listeners have heard of it.
I'm
but
sure
it's
they
essentially
have. A lot of our listeners are cybersecurity practitioners, so I'm sure they would know
Okay.
what that is.
Okay. Anyway, it is, just to bring it back for those people that don't know, it is a ticketing tool made for cybersecurity, right? So it's based on, it's a tool that's based on doing incident response in a better way by using tools made for instant response instead of tools like normal ITSM ticketing tools. Anyway, the reason I bring them up is because they have also tried to make a business model out of this now. And in the last year, they've hired, I think, 3-4 more people for their team instead of working from within a different company, building it from there. So all of these like security tools are slowly growing into mature organizations. Another one last week was an acquisition 2 weeks ago by Rapid7 of an EDR tool called the Velociraptor, which they will build into their systems as well, right? And this is all about how can you make this little tool that you start building in your home office or at your workplace into some giant that can help you and help all the other creators of it actually make a sustainable living in a different way than just from within like these operations teams.
What about the myth that open source tools from a security aspect are not that secure?
Well, that is a dilemma for sure, and it is a misconception, I'd say.
Yes.
It's also a part of why we are open sourcing in general. So just to give you an example, I open sourced Shuffle about a year ago now, and Shuffle is my company, as you mentioned earlier, right? Which I started and now have a lot of people working on in general and a larger community around.
Yeah.
And we've worked together really like a lot on finding all the issues around it, not just security issues, but also like functionality issues and bugs. So I'd say I've had the opposite. I've seen the opposite effect entirely. But to what you're saying, yes, if they are immature projects without a user base, I totally agree. Because then it's basically just someone making it at home, not trying to earn money from it or anything. But once you try to make it commercial, you have to get it to a certain standard before people will even be willing to try it out.
So talk to me about Shuffle a little bit. The technology, it's a SOAR platform, correct?
I don't like SOAR. I don't like that term, but yes.
Yeah. So tell us. To get put it in your words here, Fred. What?
Sure. So Shuffle is an automation platform in general. It's a security automation platform. So it has all the essence of a SOAR, except it doesn't have all the unnecessary tools that is, in my opinion, right? And what I mean by that is it's not bloated. And all these larger SOARs that have been bought out and who have been doing well for themselves, I've never liked their approaches to it because they try to do everything. And that is kind of the point of automation. But I don't think you should build it into your solution. So the difference here has been that all these SOAR products are also building like case management systems. They're building threat intel systems and everything into one. And they're trying to make it a monopoly of sorts. While here I'm taking kind of the open approach. Totally opposite. The whole point is stop having people just enable sharing is basically what it comes down to. It's to enable sharing and collaboration. That's what we try to do with Shuffle. And the whole goal of building it has been to use open source standards and build open source integrations so that every operations center around the world, in a way, can have the same processes. Whether they're an MSSP or if they're an enterprise, they have most of the same problems, especially when they're getting started. And I've seen that most of the companies coming in to me trying to approach it and needing it have not been like the Fortune 1000 or Fortune 500, right? Because they need mature products. They want to do it and get into it when it's at a certain stage. But it's been more of the companies that don't have anywhere else to go. It's the companies that are doing well. It's the smaller MSSPs, which there are a lot of around the world. And it is the companies that don't have the funds necessarily to buy the most expensive products, where you pay $10,000 per automation, stuff like that.
We've looked at SOAR platforms, and they are not cheap. They are very expensive, and it is a complex deployment. It's not something that you just do on a Saturday afternoon.
Yes, but why shouldn't it be?
Well, there's a complexity there, and if developers and folks like you manage that complexity and shield the end user, yes, you can. And people have. I mean, you look at what Okta, it's not open source, but when you look at them, there was at one time when you did an IAM system, there was so much complexity to it in engaging it. They've taken all of that away. You know, with all the pre-built integrations out of the box, there's so many complexities we don't have to worry about anymore.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do here as well. So in short terms, to actually talk about the platform itself and not everything around it, it is an automation platform. It's trying to solve the same same problems that all the SOARs are trying to tackle. We are trying to take it from a more open approach, where we share literally everything, and the others have done a little bit of the same, right? But it's still about everything is about sharing. Everything is about getting everyone to the same level, kind of like increasing the average security maturity level globally and long term, right? And enabling everyone to share what they're doing. And that is a really critical aspect to it. It's about sharing their processes, sharing their automations. By example, if you have MITRE ATT&CK, it would take you years to implement that whole thing into your pipeline. If you have to do it one by one, like, that is so hard. It's such a huge undertaking, and you need to talk about it with every team in the organization that's related to IT. So it's such like a huge undertaking, but I don't see why it should be if we think long term here, because all of those things most of them have technical solutions rather than needing to talk to people and the human aspect, essentially. So I'm a real optimist when it comes to how much technology can do if you think about it at
well, it gets back to original design intent quite a bit as well, right? When you were laying out the architecture of Shuffle, I'm sure there's a lot of you put a huge amount of thought into the complexities that are involved and how you're going to take those complexities out of it. In fact, that is a question. When you have multiple developers working on an open source platform, how do you keep cohesivity in the systems architecture and design part of the execution?
Well, that's not really a difference from open source compared to when you do it in an enterprise. The only difference with enterprise is that you probably do it from 8 to 4 instead of doing it when you want to do it, which typically happen with open source. So how we are doing it is we talk regularly, and we also it's kind of like you're giving people a task. You talk about the architecture, and then you bring it forward to, should we focus on this part? And then you give people a task, and then they deliver. And then you need to have some change management that's putting the code into the production pipeline. So it is the exact same process. But I want to get back to a little bit what you said there, because you talked about architecture and the thoughts around it. And yes, you're correct. There are a lot of things going into it, because these platforms are really hard to build, and that's why they are really expensive as well, because they know people can't build it themselves in most cases. A lot of enterprises have their own kind of like system for automation, but it's not as cohesive. And I want to say that I would never do it myself if I knew how much work it was. Like, I wouldn't do it again. Right. So, but about the architecture specifically, it's actually based on something NSA did. NSA built an open source tool for workflow automation called Walkoff, which was also for security operations and which they are using inside of the NSA for their operations in general. Even right now, I believe. I'm not sure how much. I don't have this knowledge properly
That's
anymore.
very
but
interesting.
I know they used to. So what I essentially did was I dug really, really far into their code, and I took out the aspects that made sense, and I rebuilt the whole thing from scratch. Because if you're going to build something that's this big as an undertaking, you need to prepare a lot for what's in the future, and you need to understand the really deep components of it. So actually, everything is built on the same architecture Walkoff, NSA's Walkoff has, and even down to the Docker level. But everything is rewritten, like the whole code base is rewritten with different languages.
Wow. So the NSA built an open source platform. You leverage that platform to enable another open source automation tool. That's pretty darn cool.
And we are compatible. That's the cool part. They've worked together.
See, that's actually very cool. So now let's go to the conspiracy theory side of things just for a second. Since you're building off of something the NSA did and they put it out as open source, there will be people that'll say, well, then there's all kinds of backdoors into it and our security could be compromised.
Yeah, and that is exactly why it's rewritten from scratch, because that is the same thing that happened with Ghidra when it was open sourced about 2 years ago, like the reverse engineering tool. And people went through the whole thing just to make sure that it doesn't have some hidden backdoors of some kind. And so for Shuffle, it's literally new programming languages and written all the way from scratch with new methodologies where I saw it necessary to improve. And I wouldn't have made it from scratch if I didn't think there had to be major reconstructions in the whole scheme of things.
I'm glad you addressed that head on, Fred, because I'm sure we would get notes from listeners saying, well, now we know it may not be that secure, but that's great. So you've taken the foundations and then you've re-engineered it and you're building it from the ground up. And this Shuffle is your idea. It is the architecture is yours. The all the operating principles are all
essentially
yours.
Yeah, it's more about taking ideas from people that have done smart things before. It's like before you start something, you should probably look at if someone did it before you, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's why reinvent the wheel. There's no point to it.
Well, I think there's something to that, though. I like reinventing the wheel because maybe you make something better. And that's kind of what happened here.
So for Shuffle, I haven't personally been exposed to it, but I have heard our engineers at Dark Rhino talk quite a bit about it, and they seem to be quite excited about it. From what I understand, it in the Securities Operations Center, it can work as that unifier, that single pane of glass across everything, right?
I would say it's a little bit different. It's not about making the single pane glass of glass.
Well, I'm oversimplifying it. So keep in mind, I'm not a security practitioner. So you're talking.
Yeah. I'm trying to get into it. There is something around this, right? And this is what Source are doing wrong, in my opinion. Like what you just said there, making that single pane of glass, like where everything is supposed to be, because I don't think that fits into an automation platform. And the reason for that is simply because of bloat. It feels like a bloated system if you make everything into one. So what we're trying to do instead with Shuffle is to use the tools you already have and kind of like empower them into being the tools that are that are working together to become the single pane of glass. So back to what I said about my example, the Hive earlier, or let's take like ServiceNow or like PagerDuty as examples of these kind of systems. Those ticketing systems, case management systems, are the tools that should be the single pane of glass. That is where everything should start. So if you have that inside an automation platform, yes, it should be the go-to place for analysts. But the point is to, instead of doing that and giving you kind of like too many opportunities, too many tools within one, it's all about using the tools you already have in different places and making them work together in like symbiosis, and then put that data into the ticketing system where the analyst can work.
All those separate subsystems, the integration of them is going to be non-trivial.
Yes.
And from your smile, it says that you've already encountered probably a lot of challenges in making that happen. But it's a fantastic idea. It's always been, ever since, I haven't been in software hands-on, if you will, working in it for a long time. But the integration of disparate systems has been an ongoing challenge for the many decades now, right? I mean, there's entire consulting empires built on that very challenge, on addressing it.
Yeah, and I think it's a shame they haven't built a solution for it instead of kind of keep consulting. But yeah, for sure, it is a real problem, and it's a hard problem to solve. And it's not something I was surprised by. Like, this is something that I knew from the get-go, because I used to work at this fintech company that did that. It's a huge fintech company in the Nordics, and I was doing security there. And when I came to that company, we were working with an MSSP. We had an MSSP.
Okay.
We used Excel and we used Outlook. Those were kind of like the three to like bring it down to the core of how we were working. When I came in, that happened. And then the whole team quit. That also happened around the same time. I'm not sure if it's my fault, but hopefully not, but maybe. But anyway, I came in there, and within like 3 days, I kind of convinced my boss, my new boss at the time, and the team that we need to change our processes because this is not working. Like, this is not okay. So I just started automating things. Like, I came in there and I tried to do it. This was when I was kind of a rookie at this. I knew security and I knew how it worked. I also knew some development, but I didn't know how complex this gets, right, in big enterprises. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because big enterprises are hard to deal with. And when you're in fintech, dealing with money at the same time, it's really complex and really hard to build in new structures and processes there. So what ended up happening was I spent a lot of time just integrating one by one all these tools. And I read a stat about this, about the average analyst using something like 33 tools on a daily basis of like cloud services and in-house services, whatever, however you set it up. And integrating all of those. And in that company, I think I did like 27 tools and I put them together. And having done that for a year and a half or so, I kind of got bored of it because I just kept doing the same thing. It felt like I was writing the same code over and over and over again, because it's all about moving data around and enriching it in some specific way. And you had to build all these systems around it. And I couldn't find a better solution. Like, there was literally no better solution around this, right? And so I kind of found that I needed to spend a lot of time just thinking about how can we do this better? That was kind of what it came down to. And a lot of companies are doing this right now. How can we do this automation thing better in general? So what I started looking at was, are there any open ways of doing this? And it turns out, yes, people are doing it already, but they're not doing it in security. They're not sharing enough. But in almost every other industry outside of security, like even in IT, right, which is bigger than security for sure, in all of these industries, people are already sharing open specifications for their APIs and use cases for them. And that is something called Open API, or Swagger as it used to be called. And this is all about like specifying how something works. But in security, we I want to say we have almost nothing. At this point, it's getting better, but it's something that we're trying to kind of help fix with Shuffle, so that whether the platform is used or not, we are still providing people with better resources for reading APIs and how to use them through Shuffle, as we are kind of sharing everything. And these are then created into code with Shuffle, right? So this is kind of like the standardization part of it. It's taking these specifications for APIs. Say you have an EDR, or say you have a SIM. Let's do SIM, because that's what people are mostly interested in. What is a SIM? If you like break it down really far, it is
to me it's just a log aggregator.
So go ahead. Yes, that is the exact thing. And now they're trying to put all these other tools into the SIM. And I'm kind of asking why. Like, what's the point of that? Shouldn't it be a log aggregator and a place you can search and get alerts from in some way? So you can schedule some kind of search within it. So, and there are other tools like that there's like the case management system. It's all about putting tickets in some place where the analyst can work. For the EDR, it's all about actually having all your endpoints in a single place where you can kind of create rules based on what happens on the computer. It's like antiviruses. It's all about antivirus, like literally stopping stuff on your computer. So all of these tools are kind of standardized. The only thing that's not standardized about them is how you connect to them, like the API itself.
Absolutely.
So the idea around this is standardizing the APIs in a way, helping move the industry towards more standardization for the APIs. Not that they need to change their endpoints for it, but so that for an EDR, you should have a way to search for the processes on a machine. You should have a way to get alerts from the system. You should have all these things. And that shouldn't be different between systems. Of course, you have a unique selling points, and that is why you buy them most of the time. But that is hidden beneath those layers a lot of the time. It's like, what are the detections within the system? That's what you're usually buying. So it's all about unifying those.
You're absolutely throwing up a challenge to the standard industry norms in doing this. That's great. I think the industry could use a little bit of a shakeup. A lot of it, I think, also, maybe get your thoughts around this, is that cybersecurity we've seen is one area where there's a huge focus on tools. There's so many vendors, so many technologies, and everyone is trying to sell their tool as a magical. I don't want to use the word silver bullet, but for lack of a better word, I'm drawing a blank right now how best to describe it. But that sort of comes about that way. And that's why you're seeing all these functionalities getting put into areas that are being duplicated across different segments.
Yeah, that's right. And to that point, right, like to the silver bullet point, that is kind of the point of Shuffle as well, is to take your tools that you already have and make them the silver bullet they originally were supposed to be, right? They were supposed to solve this problem, but they're not solving it. They're just giving you a new problem that you have to deal with. So why not automate the part that's annoying, and then you get the silver bullet part they're trying to sell you?
Well, how novel is that concept?
Yeah, this is a weird thing coming from a provider of a product in general. But in general, with Shuffle, I don't want you to use Shuffle manually day by day. Like, that's not the goal. I want you to use the least amount of time within the tool possible and get the most automation out of it you can, right? So you shouldn't need to sit there every day and kind of look at the same stuff and improve everything all the time. The whole point is kind of to alleviate all that effort for the if you were a silver bullet.
Do you see with the approach that you're introducing in cybersecurity, the role of the analyst changing?
It's a good question. Kinda. I see it that way. But I also see it as, I talked to a smart person yesterday about this, and he said something I really liked, which was about whether an analyst should be an analyst or not, or whether an analyst is the wrong name for it in a way.
Okay.
Because what it turns out to be is, if you're in a big MSSP, you're usually put into like a level 1 MSS or SOC role first of all. Like that's the entry level role, and I think that's really important. It's really important to keep that role, because otherwise we don't have an entry point into defensive security, and that is the best way to go about it, because you can learn a lot in that role about all the different tools and how they work and fit together, and infrastructure and everything.
Right.
But what it kind of came down to was whether you should yourself or be automating all these things, or be analyzing all these things, or what is the actual role of the analyst. So yes, in I'm trying to say yes to your question in a way, but I'm not sure where to go with it. Because it's so necessary.
I think human intelligence is in cybersecurity is absolutely critical to take on the biggest challenges. So if you look at that pyramid of pain, the very tip of the pyramid of pain is not the domain of any tool set. That is the domain of human consciousness. Someone uses a new TTP that's never been seen before. The only way there's no automation that's going to really catch that. That's going to be hunches of an analyst, someone sitting there going, something doesn't seem right, and piecing a puzzle together. I think that's a very important function. I think that human intelligence, the contribution of human intelligence in the SOC is very, very important. I think oftentimes because of a lack of automation, that's the fun part of the job, is to be the detective. I think, and threat hunt and things of that nature. But because of a lack of automation, the job has a certain tedium to it, because you're repeating the same process steps over and over again. And that somewhat dulls the analyst. I mean, we're all human. At some point, you're going to get bored of doing the same thing over and over. And it happens. It's a very real problem. For anyone that started in a SOC analyst role, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because you keep going through the same thing again and again and again and again. So if you can alleviate that and allow them to be focused where their intelligence is much more needed, then that would be very cool. I think it would actually operationally make the SOC a much more efficient, not only efficient, but it would increase the effectivity of the people.
Yeah, I think so as well, and I think you're absolutely talking about the right thing here. Like, this is a hard problem to solve, both short and long term, because I think there's if we talk just about the pyramid of pain for a second, the issue there is not necessarily that you shouldn't have human intelligence in the picture. Like, of course you should. You should have a lot of training in the best people in your SOC so that they can solve all these issues when they come up. Because a lot of the incident response, the incidents I got as well when I used to work at a fintech company, was not about purely technical stuff. Like, the TTPs were often like really weird things that you had to all of a sudden react to and fix. Not to mention that we implemented like GDPR processes and how to handle those kind of things, right? So there are always like these new processes coming into play. But the issue is that I don't believe most companies at all are at the maturity level where they should even care about those things, because most of them are struggling with the thing you just said, which is around doing the same thing day in and day out. And that means you don't have time for the threat hunt. You don't have time to look at all these new TTPs that have come up in last week. Like MITRE ATT&CK, they released TTPs for Docker last week as kind of like a new standard, like containers. And I don't think most people should look at them yet, because they haven't gotten that far in kind of like their infrastructure defense. But a lot of them have as well. And this is kind of like the hard thing to talk about as a provider as well, like as a security automation provider, because we can solve all those issues, but whether we should yet is not it's not feasible to go that route yet, essentially, because you need to get people to a certain level first. And that is what we're trying to do. It's all about moving people up the pyramid of pain to the point where they should be working at the top, right?
That's absolutely correct. And that's very cool. I think if you are successful, I should say more appropriately, as you become more and more successful, that you could have a dramatic impact on the industry. that would change.
I'm hoping so long term.
Yeah, over the long term, I think that this is a direction that the entire industry needs to go in, not just.
Yeah, but I am scared. I mentioned there long term a little bit, and I'm really, really scared about one specific thing, which is if you automate too much, you don't have an entry level role anymore. And that means you're not going to get new people into cybersecurity. So I'm not sure how that problem should be solved yet, because that is already a problem we're having, right? We're missing talent at this point. But if you're going down that route, then, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I feel a little differently about that. Because you still, when you put a new entry-level person in, you still need to train them. They need to understand the why behind the events they are seeing and the mechanics of it. So they must get their fingernails dirty. If they don't get them dirty, it's going to be very hard for them to leverage the automation to an optimal point, right? It's like this. I'll use an analogy that's totally from a different industry. In photography, you look at how complex these cameras have become and how automated they have become. But they have not negated the role of the photographer at all. I mean, the photographer still needs to understand exposure. They need to understand framing. They need to understand so many things. The automation maybe has sped up their workflow, right? But it hasn't eliminated their need for the knowledge that drives that workflow. So I think automation, it will take the tedium out, but what's going to be very cool now is because if the analyst can focus on the top part of that pyramid of pain, now they're going to take a very deep dive into areas that they're not even doing today. Because they're not worrying about the case there. They're not worrying about that anymore.
Yeah, but that is something that I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing, whether you should be worried about it or not. Because maybe, what if the one thing down there, we are security people, right? And you need to think worst case. What if that process down there was misimplemented? And every company has it misimplemented, that you got to go back. And no one's looked at that for 10 years. And all of a sudden you have technical debt that goes, yeah, really far.
Well, the scenario you paint is very real, and it very well could be the case. But there's a fundamental overriding factor in this, is that, imperfection cannot yield perfection. So as humans, we are imperfect creatures, and anything we design and execute is going to have imperfections. It will not have perfections. It will be a reflection of us. Yes, I deviated a little bit into philosophy, but okay. It's just the way things are. And that's because if we could design with perfection, we wouldn't have any security gaps. Our systems would be 100% secure. But that's not the world of cyber compromise. Is looking for those imperfections, and how do you exploit those imperfections for whatever nefarious purpose you have or intention you have, right? So I think it'll always be there. But it will change, and I don't know how it will change.
No, but that is the exciting part, right? Like it's what can happen. If you give people more time to focus on development and innovation within security, how much better can we actually get? If you can get those people to look at new things all the time and try to figure out how to solve a new problem instead of solving the same thing, kind of back to reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with you completely. So we're nearly at the hour here. I also want there's so many more questions. We're going to have to get you back for a part 2 here. Because I really want to get deep into some thoughts around security topics that we can maybe explore in more detail. But
sure.
I want to give you a chance to plug anything. Are you going to be at any conferences or appearances? Any talks you're going to be giving, or any
I'm
organization
not
you'd
going
like to
to
bring
be at.
up?
Yes, thanks. Yes, I would like to bring up Shuffle, of course, and the company I'm building is trying to change the world with automation, at least in the security world. And my Twitter, if you want to follow me, at Freaky like me. I hope you're going to put that in the description somewhere.
We'll put that into the show notes.
Thank you, and thank you a lot for having me. For that matter, there are a lot of things I can go into here, but I don't really have anything I would like to plug except for thank you, and thank my better half who walked around me, who's still supporting me after doing this throughout Corona.
No, I think it's been a pleasure to have you, and what you're doing is fantastic work. It's needed in our industry, and we're going to look forward to having you back, Fred, and we'll deep dive into a lot more areas. But
for sure.
Thank you very much, and have a fantastic weekend.
Oh, you too. Thank you very much.